Hello and welcome to our weekly update and feeding of the Hungry Bin versus the Urban Worm Bag. This is just going to be like a really quick look-see and feeding. Some crawling, that's expected, and the worms are busily working on all the material here, last week's feeding and bedding. Everything seems rather moist. I mean, that's the way they like it. This material right here, it would be impossible to sift. It is something that I would have to let air out a bit. So even though I don't run my systems wet, this kind of material would have to definitely be aired out before I would be able to sift it, which is just typical of this kind of bin. As it goes further down, compresses and retains a lot of the moisture. So nothing to be done about that. Typically, I don't like those kinds of castings because I like to be able to sift my material knowing that there are always worms. So yeah, my personal preference. So we're going to feed these guys up right on top of the bedding, which is how I do it. I feed the center of the bin, and if the material heats up, then of course the worms have all the sides to get away from the heat until it cools down. But they seem to do well. The worms are absolutely fine, and they do multiply and are very happy in this kind of environment. Put some bedding on top. You can see how the level is rising in the bin. And I want to make sure that the worms, you know, they properly need to process the food at the bottom before they can move up to the top. Otherwise, well, you're going to have a bunch of unprocessed food at the bottom, which is not what you want. And since red wigglers tend to hang out at the top portion of the system, you sort of need to build it up slowly over the weeks, and that's exactly what I do. So this is it for our Hungry Bin, and we're moving over to our worm bag, and same thing here. It's slightly moist. They did receive a nice large feeding last week, so full of life, these bags. And if I dig a little bit here, you can already see the difference in the castings. You can see how flaky these castings are. I prefer this much more than the other one. easier to sift and faster to dry out. Oh, there's that apple. And are we surprised? The amount of worms here are, I love it. And they're so squishy. Love it, love it, love it. And they're everywhere. They're on top, they're underneath. Working away there. Yeah, if you dig up any part of this bag, you'll see the castings are really nice and flaky. So, although I'm not really a big fan of any CFT system, that is just my personal preference. I like good old-fashioned plastic totes. But if I was to choose, I definitely would rather have these kinds of castings. They are everywhere. Happy, happy. And they did quite a number on the food. If you recall, we gave them a large feeding, about 2 pounds worth. And there's just a few banana peels that are left. These guys do a great job with the food. So we'll give them some more, of course. Let me get my bucket of slop ready here. So I am giving some citrus and some onions. We already know that these no-no foods are absolutely fine if you give them in moderation along with other foods. Thanks to Emily, the crazy worm lady, I have no problem feeding citrus of any kind. And thanks to Tori from Anarchy Worms, I can feed even the occasional jalapeno pepper. Us gals work nicely together, showing that, you know, the foods that you would normally consider absolutely detrimental to worms are actually okay. That's less going into the landfill, that's for sure. Which makes me happy, because that's why I started composting with worms to begin with. I just didn't want, to contribute to the landfill waste. And since I'm not really good at the regular hot compost, I would forget to turn it and to water it and to add to it, and it was a big old mess. And well, this is easy because the worms do all the work. So let me add the bedding. Well, maybe a little bit more here. Just a little bit more. They can handle it. They certainly can handle it. Okay, now we can do the bedding. And cover this all up. And that is it for this week's feeding. Goat systems are running fairly, I mean, they're completely dry. It's not like I have a whole bunch of liquid. No, Okay, so this is it, and we'll see what's going on next week. Thanks for joining me.